Thank you, Declan, for that. Lots for businesses to think about in a huge area that's obviously always changing, always growing, and at quite some pace. We've a few questions have come through, some submitted in advance and some during the session. So we'll take just about 10 minutes now to go through the questions. Just a reminder to the audience, this session is being recorded today and will be available on the Invest NI website, and we'll let you know when that is available for you to see. So if you're happy, Declan, we'll make a start.
Yep, sounds good, Deborah.
Okay, Declan, do you have any specific B2B guidance, as it can often be quite a bit harder to follow trends in socials compared to your typical B2C businesses?
Yes. So yeah, no, I totally understand where that person is coming from. I think sometimes social media lends itself quite well to B2C and maybe consumer products and so on, where entertaining content and humorous content can be a bit easier to create for those businesses. So yeah, it can be difficult for B2Bs to kind of find that sort of speciality and so on. So I think in terms of B2B, we mentioned it there earlier, in the rise of sort of LinkedIn continuing to rise and so on. I think, if you are in the B2B sector, you need to be engaging with LinkedIn for sure, and have some strategic element in terms of who you're targeting and so on. But it's all about creating content which is going to be useful to your customers or potential customers on LinkedIn. So high quality content that's going to be useful and relevant and important to them, but also networking with individuals on LinkedIn on a consistent basis. So commenting, engaging with posts, liking posts, and so on. Building your network as well on LinkedIn. And as we've seen there in some of the latest trends, we start to see more video content on LinkedIn. So if that's something that you're able to do, start to think about how you can leverage video within your LinkedIn posts. And as well as that, we'll start to see more brand humanization and individual posts about journeys and how they've got to where they are, and some of their personal guidance. So, if that's something that you think could be relevant, add into your content some more personal, add into your content calendar more personal content.
Okay. Sorry, Declan, you mentioned there LinkedIn. Do you see there being a trend towards more video-based content on LinkedIn rather than the written content that we see today?
Certainly the experts would say that, and sometimes that does happen. I think a lot of the trends start off on the maybe more what's seen as B2C platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and they eventually trickle down maybe a year or two later to the likes of LinkedIn and so on. So I can see that happening. I can see, video has really dominated the social media content world, and most of the people that are on LinkedIn are on those other platforms engaging with videos. So I can certainly see more video based content on the LinkedIn platform. I don't think long form articles and content posts are going to disappear at all, but we will start to see more video based content on LinkedIn for sure. Yes.
Yeah, and linked to that, as a questions come in, would it be beneficial to be on LinkedIn for an interior design business? And certainly I would imagine in that type of business, video content could be very important.
Yes, I think so. Again, this comes down to the strategic question. If you're an interior design business and you fit out offices and workspaces, then absolutely. If you're an interior design business that's maybe more focused on the home, then obviously there are maybe better platforms like Instagram and so on. However, if you have the capacity and if you have the time to work on the Instagram channels and Pinterest and whatever channels, if you have the time, I could see an argument for using LinkedIn because there are a lot of professionals on LinkedIn. You can target by a job title, and if you're a high end interior designer, you could target a certain demographic of people. So look, absolutely, you could certainly make a case for joining LinkedIn, and in that sense as an interior design business. But it all comes down to what capacity you have, what resources you have, and how many channels that you can work on well, and doing you're better doing one well rather than two at 50% capacity. So there's certainly an argument for it, but there's a lot of nuances and considerations needed on that.
And you talked about demographics, Declan. What are the most popular social channels based on age demographics? Is it useful? Are there some channels more popular with certain ages and so on?
Yeah, so I think well, Facebook is obviously the largest social media channel with something like 2.8 billion users, at least, maybe more now at this stage. But um, the largest demographic within Facebook is probably the 25 to 40 segment. Instagram is slightly younger, where you have maybe 18 to 30-year-olds on Instagram. The highest demographic on TikTok is 18 to 24. LinkedIn is a slightly older audience, where you have probably 35 and above would be the largest demographic. So it's a good question, because whenever you're thinking about your target market and who your customer is, it's very important to look at the demographics of each platform and who uses each platform, and if your audience is actually on that platform. A lot of that information that I mentioned is widely available online. So if you are thinking about a channel that you maybe haven't used, or that you are using and you want to get more of, by all means, simply, Google the latest 2024 demographics for Facebook and Instagram, or whatever channel, and there'll be fairly accurate results of who is on that platform. So yeah, good question.
Okay. In relation to TikTok, Declan, any hints on how best to grow on TikTok?
Yeah, TikTok is one of those platforms that there shouldn't be a secret formula, but there is sometimes, in the sense that you can go viral overnight and get millions of views, and with views comes followers. So we say there's no secret formula, but sometimes there is. But what I would say is that, again, it has to come from a strategic background, in the sense that what do you want to achieve on TikTok? Who is your target audience? What type of content resonates with them? What are other similar organizations doing on TikTok, and is it working? Can I emulate that? So that strategic element obviously needs to be taken into account. But there's also things like utilizing hashtags and making sure you're using the right hashtags in order to be discovered. Can you come up with your own challenges, your TikTok challenges that potentially could go viral? What works for some people is identifying a niche within their area that they can create content on, be it cheap holidays to the USA, be it tax advice for business owners, or how to get your car insurance down. Whatever it is, if you can potentially find your niche, that can really help carve up an audience and grow on TikTok. As well as that, collaborating with influencers, creators, to help you with content and promote your products and services, that can also work as well. So I suppose there's no one secret formula, really. You can get lucky, but if you combine all those strategic elements and little other tips there with hashtags and influencers and so on, theoretically that should help grow your TikTok audience.
Okay, thank you. We have a question in from a manufacturing company. So we are a manufacturing company of big equipment. We sell B2B. Is it worth creating an Instagram account?
Yeah, that's similar to, I suppose, the other question in terms of should an interior designer use LinkedIn. And I think so. I think again the answer to that is depends on your capacity, depends on your resources. Like Instagram is all around, you know, nice images, lifestyle posts. You know, is your audience on Instagram? If you think that they might be, then again, yes, have a go at it. There is a there's a shipping company called Maersk, uh, and you may have heard of them before. So typical B2B company, but they created an Instagram profile where they took photos of basically their ships going around, you know, close to the Antarctic and so on. So there's lots of really nice images around ice and so on, um, and and in those real secluded locations with their ship's branding, and that really grew their Instagram audience, but also had an effect on lead generation and sales. So it worked for that B2B organization because they had a clear objective in mind. They wanted to, you know, showcase the brand in nice photos and build brand awareness that way. So I think we can always make a case for using, you know, various platforms as long as your audience is there and you're clear about your objective and your strategy. So um, this was the answer to that is yes, but it's again nuanced with lots of strategic and practical sort of thinking.
Okay. And coming right down to the other level, a small business that works within the local community. So we've somebody asking, we're a small business with only one person working on our social media strategy because our business is geographically local. It's a gym. People are only going to travel a short distance. What is the most effective use of our time to get maximum local exposure?
Yeah, so yeah, quite a question there. So yeah, gyms, there's only a certain distance that people will travel to a gym, and so there's a I suppose a finite audience there potentially, and what you want to do is try and maximize your reach within that audience. And I get obviously capacity and resources might be an issue. So uh, just off the top of my head, there's a number of targeting tools that you can use for paid ads on Instagram and Facebook, where you can target geographic locations and reach people without having to do lots of you know, content over that week. You can kind of shortcut that and pay to reach the exact type of gym member that you might have in a geographic location. Uh, there's also a geo targeting tool on Facebook posts in general. So if if you're posting on Facebook, you can select a geographic location for it to be shown only, which might, you know, limit, you know, people outside of that geographic location seeing it. So I think what might be a good idea is to try and release some budget so that you can run some Facebook, maybe Instagram ads, maybe TikTok ads, depending on your audience, and set it geographically. Uh, and you know, we've run campaigns in the past with, you know, not huge budgets, but have reached a lot of people and have driven a lot of traffic to the site. So you know, I'm not talking about thousands of pounds worth of advertising here. You know, smaller budgets can actually go a long way on some of these platforms.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions before we close, Declan. So we have somebody asking, are some social channels penalising you for putting links back to your website on your posts?
Uh, I don't know if any social media platform has ever admitted that,
Hmm.
but certainly we would see the trend among media sites. If anybody follows any media sites, media organizations on those platforms, you can certainly see a lot of people don't put links in their posts. They put it in the first comment and so on, which would make you think that they are, but they haven't admitted to it.
Okay, okay. And one final question, and it's in relation to AI. Do algorithms recognize AI generated content and how does it react? So, does AI generated content perform as well as non AI generated? Is there a difference?
Yeah, so well, my understanding at the minute is that it can't tell the difference, but I suspect that they're working on it, and they will be able to identify AI generated content. Now, uh, the AI experts would say that AI will become that good that nobody will be able to tell the difference. So, um, I don't know where it will go, but at the minute, I suspect they're working on it, but they can't tell the difference at the minute.
Okay, thank you. Declan, we'll conclude our question and answer session there. Obviously, social media is one of those areas that's continually moving, and trying to keep on top of trends is challenging. So that's our webinar finished for today. I'd very much like to thank Declan from Brilliant Red Digital for presenting for us today. We tried to get through as many of your questions as we could, and we hope that you found the session useful. If you were not able to have your question answered today, we continue to update our business website, nibusinessinfo.co.uk, with the latest of guidance, advice and FAQs. And to receive updates, if you haven't already, please sign up for the email newsletter on nibusinessinfo.co.uk. Also, do please keep an eye on the InvestNI website, where you can register for all forthcoming events across all topics and across all areas. I'd also like to take this opportunity today to mention our Export Health Check. The Export Health Check will assess your existing exporting capability. By answering a few short questions, you'll be provided with a tailored guide that will give you the tools to develop your own bespoke export strategy. To take your next step in that direction, please complete the Export Health Check on the Go Further, Grow Stronger webpage at investni.com/export. As I mentioned previously, today's session has been recorded and will be available on the video tutorials webpage on the InvestNI website, and many pre-existing video tutorials across a range of topics are still available on that website. And should you wish to be notified of the latest events, news and support from InvestNI, if you're not already, please ensure you have registered for our 2-minute update email newsletter, and you can register at investni.com/newsletter. That's it for today's session. I'd like to thank you all for attending. It's been great to have so many people along to the session today, and I wish you all a great day. Thank you.